I find comfort knowing that how it's going to happen for me is not something that I can read in a book. There's not a, you do this, then you do this, and you do this, and then the algorithm, there's your success. It's going to happen in a way that you least expect it to. And it will be great. It may not be what you always pictured it to be, but it will be great because we've decided it's my life's gonna be great and I'm gonna do more of what makes me happy. Like that's kind of what I live by.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Welcome. I don't even know where to start with this chat. Hayley is the bomb. She left me speechless so many times with her out-of-the-world, grounded insights. I was mesmerized, captivated, and empowered. Hayley is eloquent with her words and allows herself to be vulnerable, a trait not often seen. We dive into some really exciting and deep topics. I gained a lot out of this chat. I even left feeling a little bit more enlightened. So let's get into it and officially introduce Hayley to the podcast. Hayley Orrantia is an actor and singer and songwriter. From starring in hit television series to releasing chart-topping singles, Hayley has quickly made a name for herself as one of the most exciting multi-hyphenate talents in the entertainment industry today. Hayley can currently be seen reprising her celebrated role as Erica Goldberg in the decade-long hit ABC sitcom, The Goldbergs. Parallel to her acting endeavours, Hayley has been releasing music as an independent singer. Over the course of her music career, Hayley has released a series of songs, including an EP titled The Way Out, featuring her breakout single, If I Don't. So in film, Hayley most recently starred in the Amazon/Lionsgate's holiday comedy, Christmas is Cancelled. Also in holiday spirit, Hayley released her Christmas single, The Same Way, in conjunction with the film. Additional credits for Hayley include reoccurring in Schooled, a popular ABC spin-off of The Goldbergs, the independent feature film Cooper and the Castle Hills Gang, and God's Not Dead 2, where her original song Silence You was also featured. Hayley's single entitled Open Your Mouth, a vibrant pop anthem, was followed by the release of Gasoline, which showed off a new side to her songwriting. Her music has been featured on some of the largest country music playlists and radio stations in America, including Spotify's Wild Country and Nearly Nashville playlist and Radio Disney Country. In 2018, Hayley conducted her first successful tour, the Strong, Sweet and Southern Tour, hitting 22 cities across the US. In the same year, she also performed on 3 main stages at the renowned CMA Fest in Nashville. Additionally, also came second on The Masked Singer and starred in Kinky Boots as Nicola, the wife of Charlie, during the Hollywood Bowls, showcasing in July 2022. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, such as flipping houses for fun, The Secret, Being Lucky, Leeches, Tyler Henry, confidence, fear, lessons from being on The X Factor, comparing and success, the challenges of being an independent musician, almost winning The Masked Singer, plus a lot more. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I find it adds a new element and dynamic to these chats. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode. This could be a fun place to start.
Okay.
Please tell me how you got into buying and flipping houses for fun. That's crazy to me.
Ah,
Go on.
I like that question. So I got into the house flipping business, if you will, because my dad has kind of been doing it my whole life. So his father and grandfather, so I guess my great grandfather, was involved in construction, building of houses. The house that my dad grew up in was built by my grandpa and my great grandpa. So there's a lot of roots in my family with like building homes. And so that was something that I think my dad naturally fell into as a side project as I was growing up. So I remember him having certain properties back in Montana that he would do long-term rentals, or even in Dallas where I grew up. And so once I got to, I would say about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I really fell in love with interior design.
Oh, cool.
And I love the learning more about it, why there's sort of a science to it. There are rules, but there are also no rules. So it's been a really fun thing for me, like a hobby, if you will, that when my dad was looking for another property to buy, Nashville, because I traveled there quite a bit, became a spot that he was considering. And my dad's more business savvy. He's not necessarily looking at what sconce to put into the house and why it reflects like a personality. So
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, do you mind if I kind of throw in my 2 cents? And my mom is also very like design driven as well. So it kind of just naturally became this family project. And we really have like a lot of fun doing it. And we work really well together, which is not, for every
Common.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is mind blowing. Good for you that you
Yeah.
can work that well. And I know that I think one of your parents have helped manage you throughout your career. But that is
Mhm.
so cool to hear that. One, it's like a family project that's fun. I know, like, if
Yeah.
I was to do a puzzle with my family, and I love my family, we get along really
Yeah.
well, I can't ever do that. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
When you got into it, were you kind of just figuring it out on the spot? Because you mentioned there were like rules, like know the rules so you can break them, or did you just kind of figure it out on the way?
I'm figuring it out on the way. I, at one point, about a year and a half ago, was actually signing up for, I wanted to go to college and study like interior design. And even though I'm in the midst of like 9, 10 years on a TV show, I was like,
Yep.
let me just throw a wrench in the whole thing and also do this. And it
Yep.
was not realistic for my schedule, but I'm still not totally keeping it off the table in my life because it is such a interest of mine. But I, try to study to whatever degree. I would do these like master classes of interior designs and whatever, just diving in where I could, whether it's like an AD magazine or whatever. And so I cannot at all tell you that I know what I'm doing. But but I'm having fun learning along the way, making mistakes and like going, okay, I thought I liked that, but you got to try this. It's very experimental.
I think it's really cool. And while doing the research for you, I think it was your home. Like, it was designed so well, so I can see why you've gotten into it. I need some advice, so we'll chat off here. We have this show in Australia called The Block. I assume you've got shows like that in America where it's like you get like a house and you just completely transform it. And
Hmm.
it's like one of the most popular shows here. And I heard on a podcast a few years ago, so I don't know if it's happened or anyway, you'll just tell me. But I think at one stage there was an opportunity to maybe do a show with your family. Can you
Yes,
tell me?
so we were considering that, and we had found a production company that was interested in
Wow.
developing the concept with us. Um, but it was right around the pandemic, right before, I think, even. You know how that goes.
Yep.
So it was a combination of not really knowing how the show we were planning on creating was going to be different from all of the other home renovation shows you see.
Yep.
Um, I think at one point we kind of wanted to fit in a little too closely as just like, look at us, the sweet family that gets along and like makes houses. But in truth, like if my family was going to have a home flipping show, it would be more like HBO Max, like
Go
just a lot of
on.
foul language, but it's not like with each other, but just like
Yeah. Yeah.
crass, like kind of humor.
That's great.
So one, we didn't really know how to approach that in general, and two, we would have needed more properties to be able to film something, and we have not invested actually in a new property in a bit, because we had one property that turned into two homes because of the space we had.
Yep.
And it was, again, during the middle of the pandemic, so we didn't sell the show at that point. So we just have it. And it's not saying it's never, ever, ever going to happen, but it's not a focus of ours currently at this time.
That's my question to you. Would you consider doing it in the way that you've described? Like, there's definitely a market for it. And, you know, given like your style from what I've seen and the way you talk about it, also family shows hilarious, or maybe even properties come to you. I thought that would be so cool to see that as a TV show. So hopefully we put it out.
Maybe one day. We'll see.
What do you think did it get you excited? Because it's so nice that, you know, you're doing a whole bunch of other things, you know, singing, acting, and there's some other stuff as well. And then there's this other opportunity, which is people wouldn't think that someone in the entertainment industry would be doing something like this. So is it still like, is there still passion for that, or are you just keeping it as like your words, like a hobby at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now it is a combination of being a hobby, but also we have a family business doing it, so we're keeping an eye out. It's just wanting to make sure that we're smart about like the moves that we make. And so I think it's something that is not at the forefront of our minds right now, as we don't have a property or properties that we're focusing on. But I kind of keep it more in like, for me, the hobby zone until we have a project, and then I'm like full force, like excited about diving in. So yeah, we'll see.
We've put it out to the universe. It's going to happen. I know we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I know that you like The Secret, and the power of attraction. So, okay, well, based on, wait, what did you say?
I love The Secret. I totally believe in that. That's so cool.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into it. How did you discover The Secret?
I think it was actually, I know it was a book, obviously, first. And then someone made this documentary that was kind of a telling of the book and what it's all about. And so I first saw that, God, I don't even know how many years ago. My parents had watched it. And I watched it with them, and I just found it really fascinating. And I've always felt, a lot of people call me very lucky. And I know I'm very lucky, and not just in like take Goldbergs as a perfect example of like who tries acting and like 3 years into taking classes, books a show that's now running 10 years. Like that's pretty lucky. But I also have like a weird sense of luck with like little stuff. Like if I lose something, like, and the average person's like, that's gone. Like that will not, there's no way that's going to still be there 4 hours after you lost it. And like, that happens to me a lot. So
nice.
Sometimes now there's things I'm not lucky in as well. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I make way bigger oopsies than the average person with my luck. So, but like sometimes instead of it being luck, I often feel it's more law of attraction. The word manifesting is being thrown around quite a bit, so I feel weird using it, but I do kind of mean it. Where I spend a lot of time daydreaming about things and visualizing things in my mind. And so that's kind of where I truly believe that it does work. Not with everything, by any means, but I think that there is a big part of me that believes the more that you spend your time thinking positively about the outcome of whatever it may be, it can happen for you. And there's a higher likelihood that it will. And I've seen it translate in my own life. I've seen it translate in my partner's life by using that practice. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer of this.
That is so cool to hear. And it's even like focused intent for people that might think this is a bit of a weird topic, and I completely understand. I used to be like that. But it's also like focused intent. Like I like that you say daydreaming, because when you like focus on something and then it builds and it builds and it builds, and it can become more of a reality because one's more like sure of what's kind of like what they want.
Yeah. It's like a willingness to whatever it is you believe, whether it's a God or the universe or whatever, but like it's just kind of sending out a vibration of like, this is what I want to align with.
Yeah.
And I think that just has always resonated with me. And I very much am like a daydreamer, whether that's like, I can actively like put myself to sleep in a dream, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I don't just like, not always just go to sleep and I'm like, well, there's a whole universe. Like sometimes I have to like dream myself to sleep, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's moments like whether I'm being, I don't say hypnotist, but like in a hypnotic state where I'm
Hmm.
fully aware I'm asleep, but I can
Yeah.
also kind of like see myself and I can see like what's happening. And it's really cool because that's when it comes through in that kind of like, I forget what it's called, that state, but it's like,
Hmm.
I call it the genius state, but it's a state in between asleep and being awake. And then
Right.
when you kind of hit there, that's where I get all my ideas from
Yeah.
screenwriting. I've written, I reckon, maybe 6 screenplays from meditation. And I'm sure that through what you do,
Yeah.
you've probably written heaps of songs or just things in your daily life as well.
Yeah. I mean, I truly have seen it work for me and work for other people. So like, I know that it's got to be real, but sometimes it's hard for people. They get in their own way mentally that you're like, well, that's not everybody's lucky, or that doesn't happen to everyone. And it's like, okay, well, you're already
Blocking
blocking
it.
your own path of like that happening. So yeah, I'm
It
totally with
comes down to, I'm no expert by any means, but I studied this for a few years, our belief systems.
you. Hmm.
And pretty much how we see the world is through what our belief systems are. So we can talk ourselves out of anything or talk ourselves into something. It's kind of like the placebo effect. Like why does
Hmm.
with some medicine, like, they might take a placebo pill and they might still lose their hair or stuff like that. To me, that's
Yeah.
so exciting that we have the power to change even physical responses in our body just
Yeah.
because we're kind of like told. And if someone can tell us something, it means we can tell ourselves as well.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because actually my partner Greg, he'll often, if he's ever starting to feel sick or like he's coughing or sniffling, I'm like, are you getting sick? And he's like, no, I don't get sick. Because him and his friends like, say out loud, they're like, no, I don't get sick. I can't get sick. And like that's their way of being like, it won't happen. Doesn't always work,
Yeah, of
but
course. That's
but
so
like,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, use that law of attraction however it works best for you. You
So
know?
how does it work then? Or I won't talk about your partner, but you like when the negative thoughts come in, are you able to kind of just daydream a way out of it? Do you have like practices?
That depends.
Loaded
Because
question, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I totally have bouts of like extreme depression and feeling like I can't get out of a mental cycle of feeling either negative about myself or a situation. So it definitely is not always the case. But I find when for me, it comes to career stuff, I'm a little better about like ambition and putting my thought towards what I would like to see happen for me in a career sense.
Yeah.
And again, while it not by any means has all manifested itself that way, I still, I don't know, push myself to that. Same with like romantic relationships. Well before I met my partner, I've had a lot of different relationships, some good, some really bad.
Yeah,
And
I
even
heard.
though a lot of people would get out of it and be like, I'm not ever doing that again, I'd be like, okay, on to the next, like moving on, like love's out there. Like, so I think there's certain aspects of my life where it definitely, I put more focus on like law of attraction and I kind of just like am able to pick myself up. And then sometimes where I guess I really can't, or it's harder.
Well, it sounds like you're actually quite an expert on it as well. Like we all have the ups and downs, and it seems like you've got a pretty good process. But within that, there's another topic which I find really interesting, and I don't think I brought it up for ages, so I'd love to hear your take, like trust. We don't need to get into it, but I heard your story about an ex, which if you want, you can give like a short summary, but we don't need to relive it if you don't want to, which sounded really traumatic. But essentially, the way that you just described is that you went through a challenging situation, but
Mhm.
you were able to see maybe the positives of how it empowered you or moved you forward for your fiance now, which is really awesome because often when we go through negative, inverted commas, negative experience, we can say that was negative. I'm not dealing with it. I'm going to sweep it under the rug. But with this story, and please navigate it how you want, it's very rare. And to say, I learned this, this, and this, obviously extremely traumatic and, you got help and you talked through it. But it sounds like you came out with a lot more clarity and maybe confidence within yourself longer term.
Yeah. I mean, to give listeners a little tidbit of what we're talking about, I was in a relationship with someone for about a year and a half. So still semi short relationship, I guess.
That's still long.
But essentially thought I knew this person, and come to find out I did not know this person. They were showing me what they wanted to show me. Um, stole some stuff from me quite a bit. And then also just finding out that they weren't really at all who they said they were, or their life was not what they said it was, that it's very blindsiding. And I think that trust, the word trust, has been a big thing, or was a big thing for me in the last 5 years, because you think that, like, not only is it trusting like someone else, like being able to find that, but I really struggled with trusting myself to know the difference between a good person and a bad person, because I
Interesting.
fully had convinced myself that, like, I know this person, and I'm confident in that, and I'm confident in us, I'm confident in how I feel. But then when I got out of it, I was like, okay, not only do I for sure not trust this person, and how do I trust that anyone else around me isn't like fully lying about who they are, but how do I know that I'm going to know the difference? Like, I was totally blindsided by this thing that I felt like I was just starting from scratch, like learning how to be a human. And like, how do you know how to have a conversation without like overthinking that they're actually meaning this or something? So that trust was a really hard thing for me. But one of the reasons that I'm in such a fantastic relationship now is my partner had their own experience with like trust issues and trusting someone else. But we both really, he was the first person that I talked to in my experience that understood that feeling of not being able to trust your own judgment on people. And so we kind of, I think, bonded over like taking our time and getting to know each other and get to knowing the real person.
Cool.
And that's why it's been so successful, on top of just like having an absolute blast together. but you
Yeah.
know, from a trauma standpoint, it was good to be with somebody who understood where I was coming from out of that.
Yeah. I think that, so look, we won't need to dive into it. You said it really well. I've got a few things to say because this is really exciting. Like, you're essentially like with a scammer in a sense, and not putting myself in your shoes. You've given so much to someone and then you don't really know who they are. And then, actually, I'll give you an example with me. It's not the same, and I'm not comparing situations. Every situation's unique, and it's not even with a loved one. Um, I had a deal for which would have been like my first screenwriting script. I'm comfortable. I'm fine. No one take pity on me. And this was a deal to get my first TV show made, and I was so excited. And I had kind of the blinkers on, and I didn't quite understand some of the relationships of Hollywood, which we'll get into if it comes up. And it was like waving the carrot at me, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is too good to be true." And then fast forward a little while, there was so many red flags, like an enormous amount of red flags that I won't get into. But even the way that people were communicating and speaking down to people, I'll probably just leave it at that. And when the deal didn't come into fruition, which is an absolute blessing, I was like, oh my God, like I've put in my time. How did I not see this? This is crazy. I had such a good feeling at the start. Why did my intuition let me down? And for a little while, I was like, how can I trust myself? So I understand in that sense. And I had to kind of like rebuild myself, even though it's quite fresh, but I've done it quite quickly. I had to rebuild myself up to kind of see where were the red flags and what did I miss. So actually yesterday, believe it or not, I went through like a meditative stance, and I was able to get myself in that kind of like state we were talking about before in between sleep. And I was able to see all along the way these red flags that I didn't have because I had these blinkers on. But where I'm so grateful is that although that it's a stressful, potentially traumatic time, I'm much better off from it. I'm not saying everyone go and have trauma, you'll be better for it. But I'm essentially saying that there are some, depending on how one wants to see it, this is a really good experience for me because I learned about the industry. I learned about what's not acceptable, what's acceptable. I regained confidence. I've now got hopefully my intuition back. And there's so many things that we learn that we don't talk about. And so for you to even talk about, and I know you've shared this with other people, a very traumatic experience. Sometimes we just want to sweep it under the rug, but not only have you done the work on yourself and you've found an amazing partner, you're actually talking about it to other people, which is empowering in itself. So I'd love to know, was that the intention?
About talking about it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think for me, being so open, possibly too open about that experience, depending on who you ask, I needed to do that not only for me, but there was also this after hearing a lot about this person and their story and how many other people were affected by this person in the past who've never been able to hold him accountable in any way, I felt compelled with the platform I had to make sure that the next time someone Googles his name, there's one more barrier of being able to know, like, don't go near this one. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So like that for me is why was why I spoke up about it to begin with. But I also I keep talking about it because I learned in my experience of like therapeutically writing about it in music and putting out a whole EP, going on the road and then bringing that EP out and telling my story. I met a lot of people who have had very similar experiences. And while my particular story was very specific,
Yep.
and no one can really relate to the details of that, there were plenty of people who could relate to the feeling of being betrayed, not knowing how to trust yourself, all of that. And that's something that I think we should be able to talk about. You know, we should be able to get vulnerable with each other and be able to, you know, heed those warning signs and those red flags for the next person, because it's very painful, as you know, to like hindsight being 2020 and being like, wow, walked right past all of those ones, didn't I?
Yeah.
And no one said a thing. Like, so I think I just out of I guess service to younger me, and if there's other people out there who are going through something like that and they just don't know, like just kind of just little warning signs, I guess, if you will. I don't know.
That's really awesome when I heard it. And I think it's such a good message to know that regardless what one goes through, the show still goes on and there is a happy ending. And
Yes.
yours isn't a happy ending, yours is a happy start in the sense. I hate that marriage is the end, but that's a pet peeve.
Yeah.
And I think that's really nice that, you know, whether we've had these, as you said, whether we've had these experiences or not, like we can still find someone, whether it's a romantic partner or not, or whether it's a different project or not, that, you know, life still goes on. So I thought it was such an empowering message. And in terms of, you know, you said like rebuilding yourself, did you start to like regain, like maybe acquire confidence, or did you learn things about yourself and the process, stepping away from that experience of that dude? Did you learn stuff about yourself that you were maybe surprised about? Or you're like, oh, this is cool. I didn't know I had this on my sleeve.
Yeah. A specific sense, I'm not sure. I know that like for me, it more than anything made me aware of something that I'm still actually weeding through the practice of being better about this in relationships and friendships. But like, it really opened my eyes to the people I let around me and like how closely I let them around me in general.
Yeah, boundaries.
Romantically, friendship, business, whatever. And while I maybe at one point overcompensated out of fear, right, then I kind of am at a place now where I can recognize that sometimes people are just a season in your life. And if I feel like it is not healthy or I'm expelling too much of my energy, and it's not, you know, not that everything has to be equally reciprocated, but you know, overall you get a feeling when you leave, like
Give and
something
take, yeah.
not, if something doesn't feel right, like I'm learning to just overall trust my gut more, like my intuition.
Yeah.
Because very easy for me to go, I'm being crazy. I'm like looking too much into that. Like I would give people way too much benefit of the doubt. So it's finding for me that balance of not totally closing myself off to other people and opportunity and relationships and friendships, but also like knowing what red flags to look for in general, you know?
Yeah.
So I walked away from that experience, bettering myself in friendships, relationships, investing that time in the right places, or learning what that even looks like. Because I think I really didn't know as much as I thought I knew.
That is so cool. And there's so many points. We could probably talk about this for ages, but I think that's so important because at some level, it might not necessarily need to be 50-50, but there's always like a give and a pull. And if one's giving so much and the other one's not giving anything, it's not a match.
Yeah.
It's something that I wish I knew. And I just wrote it down, like some people are seasoned in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I knew that when I was younger. because it's kind of crazy. We think if we've got a friend, they have to be a friend for life. And it doesn't mean if something's going bad that we just ditch them. It still means that, like work with the person if we can. Sometimes we can't. But essentially, like, we don't need to be friends with everyone. And sometimes people change and go off different directions, and we might meet them again. But I always had this belief system that if they're your friend for life. And people change and evolve. And as I say, go through different directions. Please expand on that, because that is a wild concept.
Yeah, no, it's a hard one for me even now, because I think, like you said, when you have a friend, it feels like it's supposed to be a friendship for life. And there are some people that I have that, and many people do, where you have that friend that you see once every year or twice a year or something. But the minute you see them, it's like no time has passed. And that is like a lifelong, like childhood friends, right? And so I think, like, in a way, I was like, oh, I can be that with like a lot of people. But then there are also just some people that I think they leech they leech your energy, and they need, like, especially if you are the kind of person, like I at times can be too much of a people pleaser, or wanting to fix someone or something happening in their life. That's a big one for me.
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah, where I'm like, why do I want to help so bad? Like, I shouldn't have to, but like sometimes I just can't. And that's something that I have to come to terms with. And like, it's also doing a disservice to this person if I'm like not able to be on their frequency with things, and we're just still trying to make this thing happen, be out of obligation of like, but we're friends, right? It's like, no, not like sometimes it's better for everyone to just like slow, we don't have to, and it's not like you have to end it in some big dramatic way. But like, I think I'm just trying to be better about coming to the conclusion that like, I cannot be friends with everyone to the same degree, because we also get something different out of every relationship. But yeah, that's kind of been like a thing I've been going through.
I know how you feel. One of my, I think it was my pranayama teacher. I know it sounds very wanky saying that, but she said there'll be a stage where one day I won't need her. I was like, what does that mean? Like, I'm always going to need you. You've got amazing knowledge. I want to be a master at this. And she's like, no, one day you'll get what you've needed from me, and it will be amicable, and you'll go your separate ways. And I'm like, first of all, I was like thinking like, you're going to lose money. Like, what are you thinking? Because that's where I was coming from at the time. Yeah. And she was essentially saying like, people can give to a certain point, and then sometimes relationships might meet an end, but it doesn't mean we don't, like, we need to be enemies. It just means you go your way. And she felt that she would have done what she needed to. And it was like, see you later, but you're always like in my heart. And I thought that was such a nice way, because I'd always seen like people, whether they're practitioners or not, where they're like, you're with them for life. But sometimes one, as we said, go different directions. So I've always found that a unique idea and empowering.
I think people, like, there are people that are seasons in your life because they do, whether you can recognize it in the moment or whether it's 10, 20 years down the line, you realize that there is something that you both were able to take away from that relationship, something you learned from each other, whether it's then something you learned about yourself through that relationship or friendship. And like, it's not necessarily something that you can or need to carry on forever. And again, it's not like it has to end where you never talk to them again. But like, yeah, I just think that we're put on this planet for a reason with this many other beings. Because if we weren't meant to, then I feel like whatever it is in the universe that made us, like, would have just put us on our own planet if we didn't need anybody else. So I think, like, like, there's a reason. Show. Yeah, we're exactly. That's a very sad, lonely reality show. But there's, like, there's a reason we're all here together. And so we learn from each other. We grow with each other. And so I think that, like, that's just been a big life lesson of mine lately.
It's very cool in a very simplified version. I've always seen like our Earth journey as a place to learn and grow. And, we teach other people sometimes through negative experiences. We're not all like good and bad. There's the shadow aspect to all of us, but I've always seen it as a learning experience. Not that I would go up to someone and say, I need to learn from you, otherwise we're not friends, but we learn in different ways.
Yeah.
In terms of also trust, and I was just trying to put myself in your shoes, which can be healthy and sometimes not healthy. But, starting out in the industry at such a young age, I think like I've got it somewhere in my notes, but at 15, you became a professional singer. And then I'll just give a bit of a summary and then you can fix the gaps. Then I think at 17, you did X Factor. Then you get the Goldbergs super early in your journey, and it's been running for 10 seasons, which is amazing. And everyone I've spoken to, I reckon I've probably had like 10 people from the Goldbergs. They're all amazing. Oh yeah, I've lost my train of thought.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. So you've come out early. You're young, and when people are young, they don't quite like see some of the red flags, as we said. And you alluded to this before. There'd be a lot of people that maybe want to take advantage of you, or bullshit artists, or people promising the world, and just all of these things. I'm probably just simplifying it to like a sentence. But that would also be very interesting because I'm sure just, you're young, everyone's young, everyone would be like this and potentially naive. We don't like have our guards up. But I'm sure there were like times in the journey where you felt like really let down, and to then regain that trust in yourself and your family sounds like it's always been there, but the people in your life as well. So has that been also another thing that you've had to navigate and work on as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've gone through, having been in this industry to whatever degree for the majority of my life, I've seen my share of someone utilizing an opportunity if they can, or not being totally forthcoming about the agreement or whatever it may be. So I've seen a series of different things playing out in different aspects of my career, whether that's music or acting, and even just friendships that I think also sort of leak into entertainment world stuff too.
Yeah.
But I guess, would your question be like what exactly is the question?
It's more just around like, have you like had kind of like, have you been on guard throughout your career, and how have you kind of dealt with all of these, let's just say, people trying to like take from you?
I think I've been, again, with the lucky thing, but I have been very lucky that I have a fantastic relationship with my parents, and that my parents are good people.
Nice.
They were never involved in the industry. They didn't know anything about it. And then when I started showing an interest and sort of this ability, I guess, if you want to call it that, in music and then eventually acting, they want to just support me because, like any parent, whatever your interest is. So they went above and beyond to make sure that I was protected to the best of their ability. So I will say that while we've had our fair share of like, something not working out the way that we thought it would, or someone not being, like I said, forthcoming about certain situations, then like, I think that they've been really good about sheltering me from that and making sure that I stray away from anything that even starts to look like it would be a negative thing.
Ah, cool. Good for them.
They play the bad cop for me. So I did get very lucky in that. But I, having been out here, I've seen a lot of friends that don't have that kind of backup. And I've seen what they've had to go through, and it's not easy. And it's unfortunately something that does happen quite a bit in the industry, to whatever degree. But like, I think just finding your tribe of people is really important. That is also very hard for whatever reason. Doesn't feel like it should be, but
yeah.
But yeah, just trying to find the people that you do trust, that are willing to view it as like a group tribe mentality, rather than it feeling like we're all competing against each other. That's so, yeah, while I've had to remain really protected, I'm very, very thankful that I have had like my mom and dad doing the brunt of that for me.
That's so awesome. And I like that you talk about tribe. And yes, it is a strange concept that it's hard to find a tribe, but I guess that also comes down to like me and individuals of showing ourselves and not like hiding behind anything. When we're authentic, then things kind of get presented. But in terms of that tribe, I wouldn't say mentality, but I've always had this mentality where my success is your success. So with the people that I'm friends with, when they succeed, I've succeeded and I feel good for them. And it's not a competition.
Yeah.
And even if people are, inverted commas, flying way higher than me, I still get joy out of that because at some tiny, tiny level I may have contributed to it. It doesn't really matter. They're happy.
Yeah. I've always been of that mindset too. Don't get me wrong, I have envious moments. I'm not like totally
We're all
immune
human.
to that. But at the same time, I have always really wanted that kind of I mean, at the end of the day, especially in the world of entertainment and art, I think that it's meant to be collaborative, to whatever degree, right?
Yeah.
So meant to be collaborative, and even if it's not necessarily the specific project that's taking off where everyone got to collaborate, it is, like you said, there's a contribution in the support, in the conversation, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that you should be okay with like the success of those around you, um, and just being supportive of each other. But yeah, I've been very lucky that in the last 4 years, I'd say I've settled into a group of people, or two different groups of people that I feel like are of that same mentality. And they don't subscribe to like the, oh, well, if you're winning, then I'm losing thing,
Yeah. Lack of
which I'm
abundance.
very thankful for and like genuinely excited for each other, because I also think that when you work in this industry, you realize that you have to take advantage of celebrating the little wins as they come, because they're few and far between for most. And you know, don't get me wrong, on the big wins, obviously everybody's there, but like being able to see who's around to genuinely celebrate with you on those little wins, I think helps weed out the people in your life.
You said that so nicely, and it's so important, like for me, and I hope other people as well, in that not everything is getting the Goldbergs, for example. There's a lot
Yeah.
of little things getting there, like whether it's writing a paragraph in your music or having a great conversation with family. There's various different levels. And
Yep.
in this industry, maybe more so than others, yes, you're in the main cast of the Goldbergs that's been running for 10 seasons, which is beautiful. And, you know, you're doing other things. You've got your music, but you're still getting rejected. And this is not a go at you whatsoever.
It's just
You are
reality.
still getting rejected so much. That's the nature of the industry. Wendy's getting rejected. I
Yep.
always bring up Wendy on this podcast. So
Oh, don't even get me started on the way. Yeah, she's incredible, but like the way like things should be happening for her beyond what I don't know. Anyway, we'll get into that later.
she's a fan favorite. I was trying my
Yeah.
hardest not to bring her up because I used to bring her up literally every second podcast. But anyway, she's amazing. You know, you see so many talented people get rejected. Like, I don't even know what the ratio is, but you're getting rejected like 100 times to the one gig. And that can also, you know, we talked about trust and confidence and intuition. That can also have a bit of a play because we can focus on these negative moments. We're all human. I'm just wondering, how do you cope with the ridiculous amount of rejection in industry? Even Brad Pitt's probably getting like rejected. Or like every single person in this podcast has spoken about the way more rejections to the big final end results, the little wins. So I know I'm speaking a lot, but the little wins are so important for, in my mind, to
Yeah.
being able to cope with it as well.
I mean, I think it's so easy to look at all the no's and let that like sink below the surface and really set in. Like that's why, you know, as much as I've had and been very grateful for all of this success on the Goldbergs, it's wild to be friends with so many different actors who are just trying to get a call back. And like, I guess I don't know, I feel like I was able to appreciate their journey because I feel very lucky in that, like, or I appreciate my journey, I guess, in the Goldbergs, because I was able to like see what the average actor goes through, you know, the amount of auditions that you put in, and one, not knowing if you're going to get a call back, but then let's say you do, and then let's say you even book it, and then it's okay, does the show even get picked up? Okay, you got greenlit for 13 episodes, do you actually make it past the first 3? Do you get picked up for season 2? Like there's so many things, like the odds of it actually happening are just so slim in many ways, but like, so it's easy to let all of those rejections like get to you.
Yep.
But I don't know. I guess I would say that, like, again, I just go back to like that daydream mindset of like as hard as it can be to like hit a no over and over again. I just like, if you envision for yourself what it's going to be, have to like actively participate in the like the knowing of that, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
willing it for yourself. And while there are times that it's like devastating because you're like, no, that was supposed to be the one though. Like I was sure of it, or it just made perfect sense that like that was for me, and then XYZ happens. But like it's a hard industry because they, as you say, like have to have thick skin, but it's just like an disgusting amount of confidence in what your path is going to be. um, but I also think that I find solace in knowing that every person I've looked at in this industry, and this is from an acting standpoint mostly, but maybe even in music, every person I've looked at their journey and listened to their interviews about how they got started or how they like took off is completely different than the next one.
Yeah.
So I find comfort knowing that how it's going to happen for me is not something that I can read in a book. There's not a, you do this, then you do this, and you do this, and then the algorithm, there's your success. It's going to happen in a way that you least expect it to. And it will be great. It may not be what you always pictured it to be, but it will be great because we've decided it's, my life's gonna be great and I'm gonna do more of what makes me happy. Like that's kind of what I live by. And I think I know that because acting was not even on my radar the majority of my life. And I was always like, music's gonna be the thing. And then of course music's kind of been like a wayside project, like taken the back burner for me. And then Goldbergs happened, and I've been working on a show for 10 years, and now I have such an interest and a love for the world of film and television. I want to get involved in producing and like, so I like my life a lot, don't get me wrong. Like I just think that when I look at 15-year-old, 16-year-old Hayley, what she had envisioned for herself, this was not the path. But I think that it comes in a way that you don't expect it to. And then I also think that I have other goals that I'd like to, with music even, and I'm not totally taking it off the table for me, but I think that like I'm trying to accept and find comfort in knowing that if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen in its own unique way. I can't follow like an algorithm, if that makes sense.
That is so true. And coming from, I used to be an accountant. And so you knew exactly after year one, if you're like not terrible, you'll do this. So then there's a structure. And every single person in the creative art, and look at it also depending on the industry, it's the same. Like there's no one set path. I think that's so important because we look up to people like in the industry, for example, and that's great. But to say we want to be that person's not going to be helpful because every single person is so unique. And as you said brilliantly, everyone's going to come in a different way. And I think that is empowering in a sense that it means, for one, I know how wanky this is going to sound, to embrace their uniqueness and their individuality, because this is almost podcast 200. And no one I know has, like very few people have gone like to acting school and then they were like picked out of the acting school and then that's how it happened. Yes, that does happen. But Wendy, she inverted commas, joined later in life. What does that mean? I hate saying that. I know she had a podcast about that as well. I think your uncle in the show, I forgot, Uncle Marvin, Dan Fogler, he was doing a whole bunch of stuff, but I think maybe in his 30s or 40s even, I can't remember, but he like hit huge success. Someone I know got like, whose line is it anyway, in their 50s. Some people get it in like when they're 15, but it's still, there's so many different things that happen. And to me, kind of the story is like, just if you kind of like follow your path and your intuition, it will happen in your way, not someone else's way, because we're not going to be that person.
I also think that something that really blocks people from accepting that is just fear. Because
definitely,
there's so much fear built into like, okay, you're in high school, you need to pick a career, and then you need to go to college and study that career, and then that's going to be the career. But it's like, there's so much fear around like, okay, but what if I don't know? Or what if I even went to college and I spent this much time investing in like, this and that. And then one day it's because I have to stick around because then my pension, and it's like, no. Like get rid of like the fear aspect of like what's going to happen if I jump, because yeah, like it's a massive part of why people get held back. I just think that life, to whatever degree, is very short, and if we do actually only get one of them, I think it's worth taking a chance on doing something that makes you happy. um
Agreed.
and just like swinging for the fences, because otherwise we're just a cog in a machine, you know.
Oh, okay. I've got so many points on this. It's kind of like, for me, when I've like seen the fear, it's to actually understand what is this fear here for, and it ties into fear of failure. A lot of people, there's fear of failure and also fear of success, which is another whole mindfuck in itself. But looking at that fear door, why is it there? And often, and I do this all the time, oh, I don't want to look at the door. But then when you really look in, everyone's got fear. Like there's even fear, like I assume going to the Goldbergs and acting, like maybe you're tired, or singing sometimes. There's fear comes up all the way, but most of the time we do it anyway. We just think of this really big example that we haven't been able to master, but we have fear in pretty much everything, maybe even driving. And so to look at the fear, to understand why it's really there, be honest and kick that door down. And something that you said before, I've spoken about this a fair bit on this podcast, but it's such a great example. I had the author of the top 5 regrets of the dying, and she was a palliative care nurse who would interview people before like they were about to pass away. And I reckon like thousands, and people of sound mind. And she said like the number one regret was, I wish I lived the life that I wanted to live, not the life that I thought others wanted to live. That also ties into it, where we think we need to be a certain way. But when we mature and realize like that doesn't work for anyone, who's that serving? That's fear as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it holds a lot of people back. And I think that it's unfortunate because some people, it feels like then they get to an age in their life where they go, well, I'm X years old, and I like, how am I supposed to just do that now? Like, that's unrealistic for me. But it's like, anything can happen. Anything can happen. And if you just like, I guess you got to somehow find that blind confidence in yourself to just like jump and see what happens, and know that the path, again, is not going to be what you expect it to be. But that's kind of the cool part. When you look back and you're like, remember when I was like walking in that coffee shop and that guy walked up to me and said, hey, do you want to be the star in my next book? Whatever the hell it is. Like you just don't know. You just don't know.
And I think that comes up to being like open to like what the universe has to provide. And when we're open, we acknowledge or at least can see better opportunities. But if we're guarded, and we do need to be guarded at certain situations.
Yeah.
But if we've blocked off, then we can't even see that situation of maybe in that example, that man's smiling and he's not being a creep. And he's like, you know what, I recognize you from here. Like, let's talk about this new movie. Like these things happen, and it comes into the daydreaming as well. It's kind of wild. It's all about removing our fears, our beliefs, so that they serve us and not the other way around.
Yeah, we kind of get in our own way, I think, most of the time. And it's unfortunate, but hopefully more people will be open to the idea that like life is about the unexpected moments, and those are the ones that I think we like really resonate with the most and the longest. It's like sometimes it'll just blindside you with like really great things, and even sometimes the bad stuff, because that, like your whole point you spoke on earlier, like you were really excited about your screenplay and then it didn't happen to, and then all of these other things happened and you learned about who you are. And that's just the beauty of life, the beauty and like the complicated nature of life.
You said that so well. And it's like, to an experience like that, and we all have experiences like that, it's like, thank you so much for the lesson. Never again. I don't want to go through it, but you taught me so much in such a small period. So I'm grateful for it. Yeah. And I guess sort of on this line as well, you alluded to this before, like the goal was always singing, and then you did acting as a way to promote the singing. And then I think you did X Factor at maybe 17. And I heard that you had some inverted commas negative experiences, but I'd love to know how that's kind of informed your journey as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first experience in like Hollywood, like doing something that was like on TV, big level. And it was very eye-opening to see that as much as we as like middle America would tune into a music show and feel like we had a say by voting, or to learn that like that's not the case. Like it is a TV show, and I don't think people know what that even means until you're in it. It's a business. There's a lot that goes into the planning of it for it to go smoothly, especially when there's a lot of money involved. So like it really like I saw behind the curtain and I was like, oh my God, like I feel lied to as like you know what I mean, to whatever degree. I think that there's a lot about those shows that's like not great at all, while also giving hope to people that your dreams can come true.
Like false hope in the sense.
Yeah, yeah, sorta. Because it's tough. It's like you watch those shows and you think like, wow, that happened for. Look at Kelly Clarkson, she's killing it. Girl's killing it. Look at Carrie Underwood, she's doing great. Like, so I just learned a lot about the fact that it is a business at the end of the day. And there's a lot that goes into that. So it was eye-opening. And I think that while I carry a lot of like negative thoughts towards that experience, I also had some fantastic memories. And I met some really great people. And it took me down a journey in my own music outside of the show that I appreciate, but I don't know. Sometimes I wonder how it would have been different if I didn't do that show.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Because now I like really only got into country music because I was put into a country pop girl group on the show. Like they gave us the genre we had to be, and then I saw country for what it was, and as a songwriting standpoint, I was like, wait, I think I write really well in this country realm. And so that's why I've done country pop music for the last decade. But I kind of put country to bed. I hate the idea of labeling myself in a genre, but I'm straying away from that world. But yeah, sometimes I wonder, like, if I hadn't done that show and I hadn't been put in the group that was labeled country pop, would I have ever gone country? But then, you know, like we know, life happens unexpectedly and a lot of things transcended because of that. So in a way, like it was meant to be the way it was meant to be. But yeah, I don't know.
It's wild in the sense of like just hearing about your journey, and we've only hit like little snippets as well. But it's also like crazy how, you know, it's a great experience in the sense, but it's your first kind of like start in a sense of where you realize that it's not really about art. It's about money, 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 which is a lot of like art. You know, you've got the producers and the people and
Right.
the showrunners, and even as a singer, which we'll get into about like labels, how it's all about money. And obviously they want the art to be good, but the number one thing is money. And so I guess you have to correct me if I'm wrong, learning that at a young age, it would kind of help you positively understand the nature of this business, that it's not all just rainbows and sunshines. There's other, and they're like sometimes necessary evils. It's just we think of art in like a very pure way, or at least I did. And there's these other things happening, but you know, you need money to make the art, and it's just crazy.
So many other forces at play in the world of entertainment. Yeah.
So actually on that, with singing, so you kind of alluded to, and I hope you'll correct me because I don't believe this at all. You said like when you'll kind of like make it, I may have misheard that. But in my mind, I think you've made it. And although it's not about necessarily numbers, like you've had huge numbers on like Spotify and YouTube, your songs are bloody good. And I've been listening to them. What do you mean by that? Is it more like having that label backing, which, and I'm just going to preface this to the audience, I've had a few musicians on, but having a label, like people see that as the most successful thing. But as we've, you know, with Spotify and YouTube, even like SoundCloud, other platforms that I have no idea about, you can be a really successful, talented songwriter not going through that other way. And that other way sounds like there's a huge amount of like negatives that are coming to light as well.
Yeah. I will say that I'm trying to not enter the conversation of music with bitterness, but I like being vulnerable and honest more than anything. But I have a lot of bitterness towards it because it's been the one thing that I wanted to do most, and it's been the hardest thing for me to feel like I properly break into. And it's interesting that like you say your numbers are really good. And it's great to hear because it gives me perspective, and it reminds me of like, okay, like 12-year-old Hayley, if she had this, this, and this, like would she feel that way? But I guess it's hard to live in a world of social media and not compare and feel like, oh my God, I am not doing nearly what I should be doing, right? If everyone's saying that it's good and it's this, then shouldn't it be looking like this? And that's been something I really have been like working on for myself is I think along the way, and I don't know at what point in my life, I don't know if it was super early on when I was a part of a music school when I was like 11 years old is when I first started there.
Yep.
And I remember there being a possible TV show that they were going to shoot about this school because a lot of really big singers came out of it. And I remember at one point they added a little like quote to the end that was like, or an audio of someone talking about this at the end of the like trailer for the show that I think always like stuck with me and maybe like messed up the way I see music and as an art. But it was meant to just be like a funny joke. But there was this like 16-year-old girl that went to the school who was in a meeting with her parent and like the head of the school. And there was like a line where they were talking about like being in the industry or whatever. And the girl goes, well, yeah, because like I'm a product and I have to like market myself like a product. And the mom's like, you're not a product, you're my daughter. And like, it was kind of like a jokey thing. But I was like, yeah, I'm a product. This has to be like this is a business. And then I think seeing like the X Factor side of things, I was like, it's got to be a business. And so it has to work like XYZ, that I kind of like lost the point of it all. Like, I think that I felt like you had to do this, this, and this, and it has to look like this, this, and this in order for it to be successful. Whereas I think some of the artists that I adore the most had their success come out of being unapologetically, authentically themselves and kind of giving an F you to the industry. And then the industry's like, hey, that's working. Like, let's bump it up. And like, that's the irony of it. But like, I think that I really kind of lost that sense of like, no, have fun with it. Like, figure out what your sound is based upon just what you're into, like find who you are in music and play around and stop looking at whether or not it's successful from like a streaming standpoint or what. I mean, and again, over the course of since I started music to what it is now, like the music industry has fully changed.
Yeah.
So feeling like you have to keep up with like all of that stuff is also really hard. So long-winded answer, but I feel like while yes, 12-year-old me would be like, wow, Hayley, you're doing it. I think 29-year-old me is like, I wish I was at a different point in my music career.
Thank you for sharing that. I had a lady on this podcast who said similar things to you where she thought she had to be a certain way. But as you said, the industry's changed and it's completely different. But she was also talking, first of all, I think you're hugely successful. I'm not just saying that, like your music is really good. It's not, you talked about like being labeled the country singer, but you to me, and music isn't quite my thing. I'm not an expert on this, but there's so many different sounds and like that you play with as well. I think that's really unique. But it's also interesting that in this industry, I don't know if it's the average person, they go, what label are you with? And you probably had that label conversation and we assume that's the success. But, even hearing like basic stories about how labels were like, you sell your soul to some labels. I don't know enough of it. And they take away everything and then you can lose the play and the fun. So it's kind of like good in the sense that you had that realization about play and fun, because ultimately art is about us and sharing our message. And there's other factors as well. But it's just kind of like crazy of what a view of success in the industry of being a musician has completely changed. And you've also you've done shows and stuff, I believe, and people come and see you. And I know it's hard, like as a 29-year-old, we might want to be like Taylor Swift and have like the billions of people listening to us. But like when you think about it, like to even have like 100,000 or 30,000, that is crazy. That amount of listens is wild. And yeah, I'd just love to know, like, I don't want you to give up whatsoever, because I think you're very talented and I think like the numbers in itself speak to itself, but also what you're sharing as well. And we'll have to talk about this another time, but the messages in some of the songs I listen to like have such like profound meaning. So hopefully I've changed your opinion on it.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's very similar in like the social media realm too, where it's like, the younger generation feeling like the amount of likes they have is like it affects, and I think that it quickly turned into that kind of comparison for me, especially when we're doing like these Spotify like wrapped things.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, cool. Like, it's so easy to be like, what am I doing? But like, it shouldn't be about that. Like, and it's not when I'm in the studio. Like, when I'm in the studio, I'm writing from a place of like vulnerability and experiences that I've had or relationships I've had or whatever. And so it's not that in the creative process, but I hate the release process of it, because then when I don't have a label and I don't have a publishing deal where someone is doing that work for me and I'm having to be marketing and the branding, label, all the things, it ruins the fun creative part for me where I just get to be an artist, because I'm worried now about like, well, because it's just me, is this coming off like professional? Because I'm not like I don't do this and this professionally. I write songs and I record and then I hope people like it. But like there's so much with social media and streaming, like TikTok now too, where you have to be creative in so many other senses outside of just making the song or the album, that like it gets to be very overwhelming. And then I find myself in a hole of like, I can't do this to myself again. Like I can't put myself through the cycle of like gearing myself up with all of these things I have to do, and then it's not right, and then it's out in the world and it never is released perfectly because I'm having to do it by myself, which I don't know if everyone would know that, but like I know that. And that's where it trips me up.
So there's a few things, and one, I think this is amazing, and even with like with labels, like they make inverted commas mistakes, nothing's perfect. But it's interesting because I've had so many stand-up comedians. They love the stand-up, but then they have to market themselves, do a shitload of admin, have to organize the gigs, and it just can take away from the art. And it's also like a weird thing to kind of like promote yourself in that sense of like spending all of that time when you just want to focus on the art. But essentially like summarizing probably like 100 conversations, the ones that are thriving are the ones that have had and I need to do this, like a shift in the mentality of this is part of the business, although I don't love it, but it allows me to do the thing that I love. And, maybe they'll hire people to help with little aspects, but it is a weird thing where, you've signed up to be a singer or a stand-up comedian, and then you don't realize all these other things that have to happen.
Yeah. And like, if you're not lucky enough to have that built-in team that's like, we're going to handle all of that for you and the merch and blah, blah, whatever it may be, right? The endless amounts of other jobs that come with promoting an artist to, then like it's just gets to be very overwhelming and discouraging, because then it's like, okay, did I fail as a songwriter or a vocalist or an artist, or did I fail in these other senses of promoting the artist, which like, I don't know. I guess that's where I at times would be like, man, a label would really come in handy. But I've also heard so many horror stories of people getting that label deal and like thinking it's really good, and then them not being on the same page about the kind of songs you want to release or the way it even should be marketed. And I think that I'm coming to terms with like being grateful that I have that freedom to be able to make my own music the way I want to make it. And then just like let go of the stress of like, okay, maybe I didn't roll it out the same way that Beyonce does, but like, what are we doing here? Like, so I think I'm trying to let the pressure off of myself when it comes to that part of the music making process and just have fun with it again.
That is awesome. And I'm glad that you bring this up, because it's, it's a really important thing in the music industry of this whole thing. But there's like so many ways to get your stuff out there. And through my perspective, you've done really well. And I've even seen like things like, I I think it's in Texas. What's it called? I think I wrote it down somewhere of where they get people in a room and they got like 30 minutes to write a song, the Song House or
Oh,
something.
like yeah, yeah, yeah.
And just things like that. That's a way to like, obviously you don't need to do that, but it just, to me, anyway, it's your life. But to me, like what you've done is success. You've got creative control. Obviously it's going to be overwhelming at times, but it seems like you've been able to understand what's been going on and move forward. It's definitely not the end. And even if for some reason you didn't sing a song for the rest of your life, to be able to produce what you've done, such a small amount of people have done it, but you've also poured your heart and soul into these with like a pure message. So I don't think you can fail in that regard. I'm just putting that out there.
Thank you. That means a lot.
So what we're going to do now, actually also back on the singing side, like to even have the opportunity, you're on The Masked Singer and you should have won. I saw some of the clips. And that's also like a huge success in my eyes to be able to get on a show like that, huge audience, even though it's not really about that, but to come out and perform in the way that you did. I'd love to know kind of your experience on that. Do you ever like reflect back at that? Because that's a cool opportunity that came through your singing as well.
It was very cool. The Masked Singer was, as much as it felt like such a silly show, it was very nerve-wracking for me because this was the first time I was presenting myself as a solo artist on that level of a platform. Because the last time I had done that was X Factor, and people only got to see me in the group already.
Yep.
I didn't really get like a solo journey on the show.
Yep.
And so unless people happened to watch the Goldbergs and connected that me singing as the character in the show was actually me singing. So a lot of people watch me singing on the show and think that like it's somebody else's voice. Or there's times that I've sung in the background that like it wasn't my character, but like I was covering a song that played in the third act or something. So like unless someone was a diehard Goldberg fan and like knew that, I don't think the majority of people put two and two together. Yeah. So it was really fun to get to like trick some people, I guess, and just have fun because like when I was growing up and I performed all over DFW, like at different rinky-dink festivals, like you name it, the Pumpkin Patch Festival, like May Fest, like random things. I would only do cover songs because I didn't have any originals yet. So for me, it was like going back to that and getting to handpick songs that meant so much to me growing up and in my musical journey, and getting to be able to perform those on the show was really special. On The Masked Singer, I mean. And so it was like a very exciting experience, but also really nerve-wracking because I don't think people understand how physically difficult it is to perform at the same vocal level inside that kind of a costume.
Yeah, that was my first question. I hope people check it out. To where it looked very heavy, and also it's blocking your face as well.
Yes, and depending on the costume, some people had a microphone in their mask if they couldn't physically put their arm up to their face.
Yeah.
In my case, it was actually the microphone working, and I was literally singing live, which was just terrifying because you think you have this one shot, and like I rehearsed it so many times or whatever, but like you get the costume on, and like for me, it was very weighted around my hips because I had a 7 or 8 foot wide skirt.
Yeah.
That was mostly PVC pipe, but the fabric was very heavy and so singing is from your diaphragm, and so I'm trying to pull like enough air in, but I've got all this weight on my waist. So I was just always so nervous that like I wasn't going to be able to hit that high note. And there's times I've seen those clips and I'm like, ooh, that was like a little.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah,
that's
like
crazy.
And I don't know if the average person catches those things, but for me, I'm very particular about those things. So, but I was overall very proud of my performances, and I like just could not believe that I was up there with people like Jennifer Holliday. Like, I can't believe Jennifer Holliday wasn't in the top 3 of that show, and it was like just wild to be amongst people or have the judges guess artists that I admire. That was also a big one for me. Was like, it was a very validating experience. For as bitter as I feel at times about my music and things, it was like, okay, so like there's something here. Like I'm not, Like it was cool. It was really validating to hear that. Because I get down on myself in that realm a lot. So it was very fun too. Very, very fun.
That's so awesome to hear. And it's also a good, like, as life goes on and we kind of want things to go a certain way, but to even look back at a moment where on a huge stage to perform that well, a big show, a lot of other talented people. I think you came second.
I did.
Which is very cool. You should have won. But it's not even about that. Like just even showing yourself to the world in a different way. I'm sure that would have been quite exciting as
It
well.
was. It was like because I knew that like no one would guess that it was me because with Goldbergs I fly right under the radar and I like that. It's like nice where the position I'm in my career in my life I'm very comfortable with. So I was like I know nobody's gonna like guess it's me. So now I'm just gonna have fun with like being able to introduce myself on this in this way, whether it's like telling my story through these different clues or when they ask me questions in the mask, like that it was just really cool to get to talk about my musical journey on a platform like that was insane and with people that I just really admire. So like yeah, overall it was a very positive and fun experience, especially coming out of something like X Factor that felt maybe not so positive
True.
at times.
And I'm sure even like at the Goldbergs, you would have had to be very secretive, and then they'd probably all see you. That'd be nice as well.
I had to lie to everyone because I couldn't tell them where I was going. And like I tell my Goldberg family everything. So they're like, what are you? You're not working this next week? Like, where are you at? I'm like, I just gotta go to the thing. Like, I'm so bad at lying.
Oh, they do. Yeah. Well, last thing on the singing thing, because I know like with certain artists, like when they hit those kind of what's the word? Struts, not struts.
I know what you're saying though.
Yeah, everyone's gonna be like, "That's the word." But anyway, my
You'll
brain
get a
turned off.
tweet about it later. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, damn it, why don't I know this word? I think I heard like previously, like when you had done songs, like you get inspiration in certain ways. So it sounds like when that next wave of inspiration hits, you'll just release more and it'll happen in another way. I want us leaving today's chat knowing that you're an accomplished singer and that the world is your oyster. So what's the takeaway? How do we get there? Have you had to kind of like speak to yourself?
Oh, I'm like, I'm hyping myself up.
No, like if there's a 10-year version of you that like
Oh,
10 years older than you came out, like what do you think you'd need to hear?
oh boy.
I
I would say just do you, baby boo. Like if like
like it.
just have fun with it. I think the biggest thing for me that I hope I'm still doing, and if I need a refresh, um, just
Nice.
like go back to the root. Yeah, go back to the roots. Do your research on all your roots and like reconnect with what it is that why you loved it in the first place and just have fun with it because nothing else matters in that like just be like do more of what makes you happy is my favorite thing so do
So
that.
great answer. We're going to send you that clip and you have to listen to it every day. But it also goes back to what we are saying, how everyone's success is different and unique and it'll all come in a different way. And you're an embodiment of that. So I think that's really cool. So,
Thanks.
oh, last thing before we do a rapid fire segment, I know we can talk about this for ages. So I saw that you're on the Tyler Henry show, and it through my conversations with a lot of people on, I know Wendy was on it,
Mhm.
Dan Fogler was on it. I don't know what they're feeding you in that water, but you guys must be like the most spiritual cast I've ever seen. Can you give me a little bit of it? Yeah, what did you get from that experience? And I guess also what is the Tyler Henry show for people that don't know?
Well, the Tyler Henry show is magic. Tyler Henry is a psychic medium. He's also clairvoyant. He's a gifted young man. I think he's younger than I am, um,
Yeah, he is.
by a couple of years.
Mm.
And he lives in California. And I'm not sure how he got started specifically doing readings for celebrities on this show. It might have just been that he was doing readings for people. And then someone said, let's make this a TV show. And it'd be interesting to
Let's
see what
monetize it. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
monetize it. You know, like I'm sure that's how it happened.
Yep.
But he since then has a separate show that's on Netflix where he does readings for all different kinds of people. And God, what an emotional journey that show is to watch. But I almost wish that I got to do it years after I actually did it,
Ooh.
because the week that he came over and we shot this thing was literally the week that I found out about my ex that was stealing from me.
Wow.
So I was coming from a raw place.
Yep,
And I was
understandably.
like, I had a lot of questions about my love life and what that was. That, and to be honest, I think Tyler saw things in that situation that he was very kind to have not spilled the beans to me on. I had to do, I won't get into it, but I had it was a year-long journey of doing some digging to find out all the details I did. And I don't think I would have been prepared for the information if Tyler had just handed it to me on a silver platter.
Yep.
So he was very cautious in how he expressed to me that you have to empty your cup before you fill it up again. Um, there were certain,
Interesting.
that was a big one. There were certain things he connected that were family members on my mom's side. Uh, and now, mind you, I like believe in all of that. So I've had readings with other mediums before. So it was kind of like, what are we just going to touch on again, I guess?
Yep.
But I think I was so mentally clouded by this other thing in my life that I wish it was like 2 years later and I could have been like, okay, let's do it now. Cause like,
Well,
screw that guy. Let's like get into the good
let's get into the
stuff, you
good
know?
stuff. Yeah.
He's incredible though.
Is it still, was Wendy first? Because I saw Wendy's episode. I haven't seen your episode. And she was
I
saying like
think
they
I
filmed
was first
oh,
and
you
then
were
he
first.
did it, but she had gone on, the other lady, the lady psychic got with her TV show. She's the long nails. She's from Long Island Medium.
Oh, I don't know anything about this.
Oh, get if you like that kind of stuff, check out the
Yeah.
Long Island
I'd
Medium.
love to go on. It'd be really interesting.
I think she also spoke with her. I might be wrong. I think she also spoke with her, but I don't think she did the TV show of it.
Ah, gotcha. Because I was
And I
just
think I did Tyler Henry, and then I think she did Tyler
oh,
Henry.
so you
I
were
might
first. I rub it in her face. But
be.
it was wild how, she was talking about from her experience, a lot of people, and I am to degrees, skeptical, but she's like bang, bang, bang. And also the show, I think they're filming for many hours. They probably only show like half an hour from memory. And it's
Mhm.
just wild. Was there any insight that you got, or was it just you're going through that phase that you couldn't absorb it all?
Like as far as what any information he gave
Yeah.
me, or
Yeah.
the biggest thing was like I know he saw some stuff that he like. I can't honestly I can't recall everything. It was a 2 hour long session,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
obviously not all of it made the show. But yeah, I know he was spot on with everything, and even
Uh,
things that we couldn't click in the moment. I called someone after that I had suspicions it was that, and it was in fact that. So I'm like,
wow.
okay, and I believe that stuff's true. Whether I say this to people, like whether you're religious and you believe in God, or whether you just believe in like the universe and a higher something, I do believe that there are people that have been put on this planet to connect us to things that we can't necessarily explain. Because let's say you are somebody who's very religious, like, and you're like, I don't know about them mediums. Like, I come from the South, so a lot of them are like, that's witchcraft. And I'm like, well, if you think about it, like, why don't you think God has maybe placed certain people with these gifts on Earth, so that honestly, I think it gives people more faith in there being a God when you have something like that you can't explain, and you go, like, I don't view it as like a voodoo witchcraft thing. I view it as like, what a gift to be able to find comfort in that. And most of them, I would like to think, use it for good,
Yep.
And so it was a very positive experience. And I think he's an amazing human being.
Oh, that is so nicely said. So what we're going to do to wrap up the podcast, what was I going to say? Okay, so we're going to do a quick rapid fire segment to wrap up the podcast. So first thing that springs to mind, biggest pet peeve.
Oh, the I think the sound of two like metal things hitting each other sends me spiraling. I don't know if
You
that's a
have to
pet peeve
expand
or
on
just
that.
like an auditory issue. Like, I thinking about it now. it's like a fork and a knife. Like if they go in between each other, ooh, I have to do this, and it's not good. Not good.
I've never had that answer before, so thank
It's
you.
bad.
I won't comment on them because I'll derail them and it will go off in so many different tangents. What are you most proud of?
Oh, um, what am I most proud of? Um, I guess I would say like the place I'm at in my life, like just being able to have pushed past things and getting to a point where I'm like taking my health seriously and like showing up for myself.
Okay, I said I wouldn't comment, but that's awesome. But now I won't comment. Next big dream or goal?
Big dream or goal. I want to produce a TV show, and I want to be involved in the making of that. And I would love for the same crew from the Goldbergs to be the crew on this show because I love them and I want them to be with me forever. So
Wow,
that's my major goal this year.
very cool. What would you do if you knew you cannot fail?
Oh, what a big question. Um, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? I guess start my own label.
Very cool. I've got so many questions. So which one? Yes, definitely start your own label and your own TV show and the renovating TV show as well. We've got a few
Yeah,
few
I got a
homework
lot
points.
going
Yeah,
on.
this is your homework. Uh, well, any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Mm. Uh, advice. I mean, I would just say, obviously, try to trust your instincts if something doesn't feel right. But like, I think that there is a degree of like, just jump, like, what do you really have to lose? And know that like, if you have faith in yourself, then like, it's gonna catch you.
Before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you, what is the one question I should have asked you?
Oh Um, these are why is it so hard for me? One question, and they should have asked me. Um,
Normally, normally these are like 10 minutes of silence, so don't worry.
oh God, I'm so glad. I'm like rapid fire. I'm like there's so much pressure. I would say you didn't ask me about my cat, who is essentially like my child, and
Tell me
so
about your cat.
I just think about her all the time. I was never a cat person. Didn't like them. They didn't like me either. I was a dog lady, and uh, moved to LA. Couldn't really handle having a pet. But then working on the Sony lot one day, this cat came along,
Wow.
and I now feel like I feel what it means to be a mother. Don't quote me on that. Because obviously
No,
not
that's
at
a
all.
joke.
But like.
People know it's a joke. That I think Wendy, I know I've brought up Wendy, but doesn't Wendy have like 10 cats as well? Do you ever have like cat
She's got
dates?
too many cats.
Yeah.
Yeah. she's got a catio. Do you know what that is?
No.
The cat patio. She literally had someone make a like a closed in indoor outdoor patio for her cats. She's a
That
cat
is
lady,
that is
but
hilarious.
I'm very thankful for it because I can go to her when I first had a cat and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know what this thing's doing right now. And she's like, I got you.
It's like, come here, child. I will give you all the wisdom.
Actually,
That's
I don't know if you can hear her, but she's meowing right now. So I think she's
I
talking
can't.
about it.
And I assume when you found this cat, it didn't have any of the like. You just took the collar and threw it in the bin. Like, look at this stray cat.
No, I actually was adamantly like not prepared for a cat because it's a long story, but I had just been in Paris for Christmas with my fiance and he got COVID on the last day. And so he had to stay in quarantine in Paris and I had to fly home without him, weeping. So he's trapped in Paris having no idea when he's going to be able to come home yet. And then I went to the Sony lot to get double tested for COVID to make sure I was actually, which knock on wood, never had it.
Oh wow.
Um, I know, fun fact. But yeah, I went to go get double tested, and that's when the wardrobe girls were like, "Hey, we found a cat, and it needs somewhere to go." And at first, I was like, "I'm just gonna foster for the evening. Like, I don't know what I'm doing." And we checked to see if she had a chip. She didn't. I went on every website to be like, is someone looking for a cat that looks like this, that's description is like this? Could not find him anywhere, any of the shelters, any websites. So I was like, guess you're sticking with me.
I imagine there was like a tug of war with Wendy, like, no, I need another cat. Like, no, it's my cat. And
It was tough. This cat is so dope that like a lot of crew members were kind of just like having a hard time whether or not they wanted it. Like, oh, can I take it on? And like, I don't know. But then I'm like, too bad. She's with me now.
You replaced your fiance with a cat. I love it.
He got over. I was like, we have a cat.
Wow. Before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you, check out your music, and all of that cool stuff?
I'm on all socials, trying to be better about balance though. So you may not find me on IG all that much, but it's all Hayley Orrantia. Don't really do Twitter anymore, you know. And then, but TikTok I'm all about. So you can find me on TikTok under Hayley Orrantia. And then my music is also under Hayley Orrantia. I'm on like all streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, all that jazz.
Very cool. I'll put that all in the episode notes so people can check it out. Thank you so much for your time. I love your like abundance and forward moving mindset. This has been a real treat, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great talking with you. I appreciate it.
I love Hayley's take on how we're all unique, and because of this, all our paths are different to each other. Often as humans, we look at someone who we admire or want to emulate and think, why isn't that me? Why haven't I achieved what they have? Hayley dives into the fact that we simply cannot compare our journeys to others. There is no one path. We're all too unique and our experiences vastly differ from each other. As the Russian proverb states, all roads lead to Rome, meaning different paths can take one to the same goal. She encourages us to enjoy the process of life rather than just focusing on the end result. She states that we should jump in regardless and see what happens. It will happen in the way needed for you. It's not going to be what you expect it to be, but that's kind of the cool part. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. Life is all about the unexpected moments, and those are the moments I think we really resonate with the most and the longest. Sometimes it will just blindside you with really great things. Hayley Orrantia. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.